Welcome to the Home Front and the Substack Live for today. I am joined by my good friend, Joe Walsh. Joe, welcome.
Reed, it's always good to be with you, brother.
All right, man. So a couple of things I want to go over with you. So, you and I have not really been, involved with the Republican Party for a while now. So we spend more of our time with the Democrats fighting alongside them. And you posted something recently about the idea of former President Biden going out on a sort of like, I don't know if it's a redemption tour or a reintroduction tour. I'm not sure why you need to do that at this point. But give us your sense of what your concern about that is, what your frustration about that is.
And Reed, again, it is always good to be with you. And let me just say this at the outset, and I'll say it a few times. Everybody listening right now who subscribes to Joe Walsh, damn it, get off your ass and subscribe to Reed Galen. Immediately, you will
Thank
be
you, sir.
wiser and smarter for it. Reed, I had and have a fatal flaw as a politician. I just say what I believe. I'm so fucking pissed at Biden because I think Joe Biden, to a large degree, got Donald Trump elected. And what a horrible thing for our democracy. Biden wouldn't go away. Biden put his own interest in front of the country's interest. End of story. You know the deal. And because of that, Trump's in the White House. And Biden's doing the same thing now. Why is he out there right now? Every look at him, listening to him, reminds people who are not far right or far left, just all the kind of people in the middle, many of whom voted for Trump. They just remind these people of why they voted for Trump and why they're pissed off at Democrats. If Joe Biden wants to help Democrats, we should never hear from him again. I mean that. He's putting his own interests ahead of the country's interest again, and he's hurting Democrats.
Well, yes. And so I think this is one thing that Democrats, in our experience with them, both running against them and working with them, is that they often find themselves betwixt and between, which is if we do X, Joe, then Y might happen. If we do A, Joe, B might happen. And we're not okay with any of those things. So then it just creates this sort of paralysis, this stasis, which is you can politely say, "Thank you, Mr. President, for your service. Your sell-by date is long gone." You can be honest. And look, I mean, I don't think, over the course of the next, as we're talking about this, Joe, over the course of the next coming weeks and months and years, until and unless I think our friends are willing to have that reckoning, I'm not sure that they can move forward. But that means that somebody doesn't want to, or that there's not the institutional willingness or inertia to do so.
Reed, I think you nailed it. Look, the biggest problem with Democrats is they're just not fucking authentic. They sound like politicians. Donald Trump sounds authentic. You and I know he's not. He's a bullshitter. He's a liar. But he's not a prepackaged politician. He just blurts shit out. He doesn't consult with people. Democrats are the antithesis of that. They still worry about every single fucking word they're saying. Say what you believe. Reed, there's a hunger in America for authenticity now. It's been there for a while. It's why Trump has succeeded. As long as Democrats continue to sound like politicians, they're not going to defeat him. And they ought to come out and say, I would say it more forcefully than you said it, Joe Biden, love you, love what you did, go, you're not helping. I think a Democrat who said that, it would go a long, long way because they feel that way.
Well, I think you're right. And I think the problem is that they try and come up with performative authenticity.
Yeah.
That the idea is like, well, we'll get these influencers to show how cool we are. Like, look, guys, as I've said before, if you're boring, be the best boring you can be, right? But don't be something you're not. I mean, Trump is what he is. I mean, I think about, Joe, I haven't played golf in God knows how long, but, in college, everybody had that one friend. Well, if we went to college, that you're like, can you believe what that guy just said? Can you believe what that guy just did? And how somehow they always got away with it. Like, that's who he is, right? Like, nobody believed anything that came out of the guy's mouth.
Yeah.
No one should believe what comes out of this guy's mouth, except intentionally where his intentions lie, which are obviously, I think, a bad thing for the country. But I think that the question is, and I say this for Democratic voters, especially those who stay at home, are the Democrats providing anything outside of Donald Trump is bad, which he is, but clearly that's not enough.
Reed, my biggest fear is that Trump's going to so mess up this next year that Democrats are beginning to think that all we have to do again is say Trump is bad and we'll take back the House. And maybe we'll get lucky and almost take back the Senate. When what Democrats need to do is self-reflect and figure out who they are and what the fuck they are and what they want to say and present. But I think November Reed ended the Trump is bad, Democrats can win. I think Democrats have to be something more than that. Or people will vote for the asshole again. And my worry is that more and more Democrats are falling back into the trap because Trump is so bad that they can win that way. They can't.
Well, and so this begs the question, Joe, which is, if losing to Donald Trump not once but twice wasn't enough, do you have to lose again in a midterm you should win? Does it have to be a complete decimation of what you and I would call sort of the left politically in this country before they can sift through the ashes and figure out what happens? And here's the other part too, which is what happens in the while that's going on, right? This process it doesn't occur in a vacuum.
You and I have talked about this endlessly, and I love to talk to you about it. I campaigned every single day for 3 months in a battleground state for Kamala Harris, and damn near every regular voter I talked to said the following, a variation of the following. Joe, I know Trump's an asshole, but the Democrats are elitist and they look down on me and they dismiss me and all the rest. A voter basically told me a variation of that. Every voter did.
Right.
So Trump is an asshole and he's never going to change. But Democrats, don't be the dismissive party that can't relate to regular working class people anymore. That's your deal. And these folks want to see authentic people. Trump's doing horrible shit. He's attacking democracy every day. But don't sound like a politician when you fight back against that. Be righteously angry. It's a real struggle for them.
Well, again, I think it goes back to that idea of like, let me back up. For years, when we were all out there fighting, 2024 and before, people say, "You guys are so good at messaging. How come you're so good at messaging? Like, what can we do differently?" And I said, for me, anyway, in my opinion, Joe, messaging is downstream of belief. Until and unless you can decide what you believe in, right, then it's very difficult to decide what you should say. And I think that's one thing too. We've seen that there's so many different and disparate groups, all of whom believe that their issues are the most important, all of which could be. But they can't even agree on who should say these things or who should even be in the room while they're discussing it.
And you led this show talking about Biden, and we talked about how the Democrats need to move forward and look forward and find those messengers and find that message. So the last thing they need right now is that old guy, that old reminder out there right now. If Joe Biden cared about the Democratic Party, cared about the party moving forward and providing that message that will take voters from Trump, then Biden's got to be out of the picture because this has got to come from newer Democratic voices.
Well, let me ask you this, Joe. You've been traveling around. I mean, we both traveled all over the country last fall, and as I joke, if somebody had told me 10 years ago I'd be out in swing states canvassing for Kamala Harris, I would have thought that you were smoking something. But here we are, strange bedfellows and all that. But what are you hearing? You have been, I think, unique among so many of us as having come from the Tea Party movement, but really being willing as anyone to go out and have those hard conversations in a respectful way. Well, like, what are you hearing when you go out there?
And again, Reed, you know my history. I used to be a divisive son of a bitch. I helped to create the divide. I think the country's dangerously divided. I think face-to-face conversation is how we heal the divide. That's why I'm going out there every week, just talking to regular folks. We're filming them, these conversations, and we're putting them up. There's there's a yearning out there among Democrats to win. I sat down with 6 hardcore progressives in LA a few weeks ago, and man, they're open to a center right candidate. They're open to expanding the Democratic coalition, expanding the base. 6 LA progressives, and they worry that AOC can't be the nominee. So, one thing I'm hearing from Democrats, as I have regular people read, regular folk, is they want to win and they worry their tent's not big enough to win, which always then ultimately leads me to the question, okay, is the Democratic tent big enough for AOC and Reed Galen or AOC and Joe Walsh? And on that one, then they hem and they haw.
Well, because I think that's I was going to a dinner last week or a couple of weeks ago, Joe, and I said, the funny thing about the Republicans nowadays, and maybe for all time, Joe, is like they'll take whatever crazy you got. Right?
Yeah.
They don't ask you to agree on everything. They just ask you to agree on one thing and basically just shut up about everything else, right? And I think that litmus test is it's sort of the bizarro world, right? It's the photo negative, which is no, you have to agree on everything with me, or you can't sit next to me. You can't sit with us, and that's a really hard attitude to have if you're trying to build a coalition. If
Yeah.
you're trying to do anything that's additive, and I'm not just talking about in politics, I'm talking about in anything. If you had 10 people at a table and the first thing you say is, if you don't do everything I say exactly the way I say it, if you don't talk the way I talk exactly the way I talk, you have no voice. You don't have an ability to have an opinion. And if your opinion is even the least bit heterodox, get out of the room. And I think that's a really hard, politics is not addition by subtraction.
I think, and Reed, you and I acknowledge to our Democratic listeners, anybody who's Democrat listening to us right now, the Republican Party has it easier right now. I acknowledge that. The only litmus test in my former party is, do you support Donald Trump? If you do, you're in. If you don't, see ya. So that's their litmus test. The Democrats do have a litmus test. The Democrats need to recognize that they're not winning right now. And I'm telling you, they're not going to defeat MAGA. MAGA is bigger than Democrats realize. It really is. And Democrats are not going to defeat it unless they expand their coalition. And that means whatever issue based litmus test read they have, they got to put that to the side right now if they want to win. And look, again, you and I say it all the time. I mean it. I think we're fighting to preserve democracy and the rule of law. Well, if you really fucking believe that, Democrats, then expand your coalition and get somebody in your coalition like a Joe Walsh who may be too pro-gun for you.
Well, but I mean, remember that, to take a step back towards Bernie Sanders, remember that one of the big things about Bernie Sanders in his 2016 presidential run was not his economics, was that he had a good rating from the NRA because
Yes.
he's from Vermont. And Vermont is, yes, it might be progressive politically, but it's a bunch of progressives with shotguns and rifles, right?
Reed, perfectly put. And that, again, bringing up Bernie reminds me that I believe we're living in a populist moment. We've been here for a while. I am probably more of a populist than you are. Trump is a populist. He's an evil populist. But the Democrats, Reed, haven't recognized this moment. And when I say we're living in a populist moment, I just mean a lot of Americans are pissed off about a lot of things, a political system that has not been there for them. Democrats need to recognize that Trump's an evil populist. Give me some good populists. And Reed, I'm at a point, maybe you disagree with me. I want a Democrat who's a populist. I don't care if it's far left or a centrist populist as much as just a fighting populist, a fighter.
Well, I mean, look, I think that there's the as you talk about, I mean, Trump's populism bleeds into nationalism in a pretty big hurry, right? Which becomes blood and soil, becomes based on race and a
Wait,
lot of other ugliness. Um, but I think this is, to your point, I mean, we are in a populist era. We are in an establishment era, right? An anti-status quo era. And frankly, for the Democrats, that presents, from my perspective, a hell of an opportunity because everything that we have known is either broken, and you could make it by the great financial crisis, you could make it by COVID, now it's about Trump, right? Everything's broken, right? The 80 years of everything we knew from yesterday, victory, the end of the war in Europe yesterday, 80 years, that's gone, right? That's gone as much as we've known it. So there's actually a real opportunity here to say, okay, what comes next? What is our alternative vision? What is the countervailing force we want to present? But Joe, you actually have to, one, have done the thinking about what that is. Two, believe in yourself that it is a good idea. And lastly, that it is good for the American people because, I did an event with Joe Trippi, our good friend Joe Trippi, down in Florida a few weeks ago. And he said, I think the reason why the word democracy didn't work as a message, and I think this is right, and I think it's heartbreaking, is because so many people saw democracy as one of two things, either the status quo, right? Or it's never done anything for me. Why do I care? Right. And I think that both of those things could be right.
they're both right. Remember, I voted for Trump in 2016. I didn't like him. I didn't really pay attention to him. But I voted for him because I wanted disruption. I was part of the Tea Party class. I went to Washington to fucking disrupt because I think our political system is broken. Um, Trump is a disruptor. He's a bad, evil disruptor. But our system, as you said, still needs disruption. This is an opportunity for the Democrats to spell out what good, positive disruption means to a
Yeah,
broken system.
I mean, Joe, you think about this, and you and I actually texted about this a few weeks ago, and we never really got an opportunity to get back to it. Maybe we got a few minutes here, so we can. Is that as the Tea Party was rising on the right, there was a corresponding movement on the left. They called it Occupy Wall Street. The difference is that the Tea Party was, in some ways, and you can tell us more about this, not only able to coalesce around a message and a belief system and a vision, but also, frankly, to co-opt its own party, right? Or the party it most associated with, I should say. The Occupy Wall Street was pretty much, those were people who I think we would consider even now economic progressives, even a little bit economically radical. But the Democrats really wanted nothing to do with them.
No, and when you think about it, Reed, and I don't know if I've ever asked you this, like in 2016, Bernie Sanders running for president was was a populist.
Mm-hmm.
I disagree with Bernie on plenty of policy, but he was a good, positive populist. If Bernie had been the nominee in 16, the Democrats would have won. Bernie would have beaten Trump, I believe. But look at what the Democrats did. In this populist moment where regular people want disruption, they give us Hillary in 16, the poster child for the establishment politician. Trump then is president for 4 years, and he does such batshit bad stuff that America did elect another establishment politician, Joe Biden.
Barely, just barely, though.
That's a great point. Just barely. And then 24 comes along. Trump's still doing his things. We're 4 years removed from Trump in the White House, so we forgot how bad he was. And the Democrats kind of cling to this establishment message still.
Right. Well, and so that's a question. That's a great segue, Joe, because this is one thing, you and I come from, as my dad used to say, right, we were Trotskyite Republicans in our house, right? Right?
I love that. I love that, Reed.
We were not conservatives. We were Republicans. And that was a thing you could be back
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
Even when I worked for George W. Bush, I was never as conservative as George Bush was, right? McCain, Schwarzenegger, those
Yeah.
people were sort of more aligned with me. But do you think the idea if MAGA, if Trump, right, has knocked over the chessboard and Trump is sitting in the corner eating the pieces, do we believe that this sort of traditional left, right, conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat paradigm even really still exists? I mean, you have people in the administration and look, I think it's all BS. I think if push ever came to shove, the food industry would pay off Trump and all this stuff would stop. But you have people within the Trump administration advocating for getting rid of dangerous food dyes and all these other additives. I mean, I just saw this thing like we can't import American beef into the UK because it's got too many chemicals in it. They won't take our chicken because we bathe it in chlorine. Like those are things that were traditionally, more of a like lefty coded idea of like we should get big business out of food, right? And now it's been co-opted by MAGA, and so it doesn't translate correctly anymore. Does that make sense?
That's a really interesting way to put it, Reed Galen. And by the way, this is what's cool about you and I. You and I come from very different parts of the Republican Party, but because you're so fucking principled, and I finally became principled, we're both proud never Trumpers. I don't. I think. Look, MAGA is the Republican Party. In my lifetime, it's not changing. It is not a conservative philosophy. It's not a limited government philosophy. MAGA believes in using big government to force us to be in their kind of an America. I recoil against that, just like I would recoil against a leftist ideology that wants to use big government to have us be their kind of America. I think there's an opening for, again, a lot of people in the middle don't want either one of that. And you've got all these people in the middle who want common sense, let's get shit done, work together kind of stuff. MAGA will never get them. Trump got too much of them because the Democrats have been out of touch. But I still think all these people are there waiting for Democrats if they'll get their act together.
No, I think that's right. And again, my fear is that, as we've seen, that this is not an unusual thing. A party that has lost, a party that's out of power is trying to come to grips with itself. Who are we going to be? What are we going to be? What are we going to talk about? So that's not unusual. The difference is between now and say, I don't know, 1984, right? Or 1988. That it's maybe you didn't like it, maybe the Democrats didn't like the Republicans, but everybody went to bed assuming that George H.W. Bush was not going to overturn the world right while they were asleep. So it's just the world is a different place now.
And Reed, that's why I'm so fucking pissed at Joe Biden. Every day last year, I screamed, Trump is a threat to democracy. He's a fascist. Kamala Harris in the campaign called him a fascist. Joe Biden said he's a threat to democracy. He's a fascist. Then Trump wins. And look, we all accept the result of the American people. Kamala Harris conceded. We all accept the election result. We do what Trump and MAGA couldn't do in 2020.
Right.
But then Biden has Trump over to the White House for tea. Biden and Harris go to the inauguration. It's like you told the American people this guy is not like George W. Bush or Ronald Reagan. This guy is a unique threat. And then you make nice with him. I think creates a real cynicism among regular people like, oh, they're all the same. They're all kind of good and bad and blah, blah, blah.
Well, and that is the evil brilliance of what Trump did over the last 10 years was say, you remember when he was asked on Fox News about Vladimir Putin killing people? He goes, "You think we're so great?
Yeah.
You think we're so good? You think we're so clean?" And he said that about everybody. And the problem is, this is one thing I think. Look, this is hard work, and it's frustrating, and it can grind you down. Joe's like, if we're gonna be the better people, then we got to be the better people.
Yeah.
If we're going to say we're not like that, then we can't be like that. If we're going to say, no, we do care about individual Americans, we don't care about the establishment privileges that we've gained over the last 100, well, listen, the Democrats have been around since the founding, right, in one way or another. If you're going to, you have to risk that. And I think this, to me, Joe, is one thing that I think that our friends haven't had to do yet. They haven't really had to risk anything yet. They haven't had to put anything on the line. And I don't, and I say this not as like, wagging my finger in the face, but like until and unless you've decided, as you talked about, and you more than me, right? Like I was always sort of what we would have called a squish in the old days, right? Like you had to give it all up, right? You gave up your seat, you gave up your career, right? You've had to suffer literal slings and arrows. And I think that there is something that comes from that experience that is, that is solidifying in a belief system, is hardening in a shell, but also is necessary to say, okay, like this is bad, guys. We've been there. You guys, and maybe it's because you haven't been there yet that you don't get it.
So I threw everything away. I took a blowtorch to my career. I ended my life as a Republican, and I get threats and hate every day like you do. And it's because of that, Reed, like we did the right thing because we know the threat he and that philosophy are. And that's why you and I spend so much of our time helping Democrats get their act together because they're the only game in town. They're the only thing that can defeat this threat. And I think you're right. I don't think they've hit rock bottom or had that come to Jesus moment yet. But it's right there in front of them. This guy, Reed, is disappearing people off of our streets. He's crashing our economy, and he's standing on the world stage against the free world. If you can't get righteously angry and risk giving up your career to speak out against that, then you never will.
Well, and just let me say one thing about what you noted about people being disappeared. Remember, guys, that we saw this in 2020, right? Like none of what we're seeing is new. They had practice during the summer of 2020 after the murder of George Floyd and the protests, right? The little green men without badges, with pepper spray, batons, and unmarked vans, guys, they were in the streets. Remember, they intentionally sent them into Portland, right, to try and gin up violence, and it worked. Right. So like they're not like they know what they've done. Like, and guys, this is one thing. Be anything, but don't be surprised. Be anything, but don't be surprised. All right, Joe, we've got just a couple minutes left. Before we let you go, where can everybody find you? I know you're here on Substack. Is there anywhere else folks should find you?
Anywhere in social media. I mean, it's Walsh Freedom, or look for the podcast, The Social Contract with Joe Walsh. The only plug I'll make, Reed, is, and again, I do a lot of like what you do. I made up my mind 3 months ago. I'm not going to spend the next 4 years sitting in a TV studio bitching about Trump. So every week I'm going out and having conversations with regular Americans. I found on the campaign trail with Harris that Americans are dying to have
Yes.
to face conversations. I think it's the only thing ultimately that will help save us. So I'm going out there every week. We're filming these conversations, and we're putting them up on my Substack. So I think we can all learn from them. That's all.
No, listen, and I 100% look. I feel the same exact way, having been out in the neighborhoods and on the streets. Is as I've said to other people, like there were so many people, Joe, that were even outside of politics. These were folks who just seemed like they were happy someone had knocked on their door and wanted to talk, and that to me was really. I mean, first of all, a lot of places I went were pretty tough. All right, I am blessed, beyond blessed. And you could see why people are like, F it, doesn't matter,
Yeah.
right? None of this matters. It doesn't matter if I vote. If I vote, if I don't vote, it doesn't matter. None of that happens. But I will also say to you, Joe, and this is something that we at the union, join the union.us, go there today, is I really do agree with you 1,000% that in-person, three-dimensional communication and contact is so important. Guys, I mean, what you're seeing here, we could not be more thrilled and flattered that all of you have spent half an hour with us today, right?
By the
But
way,
if
everybody listening to us, if you are subscribed to me and you're not yet subscribed to Reed Galen, get off of your ass and subscribe to Reed. I will say this, Reed, and I do not say this about many. You are one of the smartest political
no,
minds, Josh, let me finish, that I know. I mean that, and we need that, and we got to learn from that. So everybody subscribe to Reed Galen's page.
well, you listen. Now I gotta go. I'm gonna float out of my office here after we're done here. Joe, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Reed. Thanks,
All right,
man.
everybody else, thanks so much. Have a safe, healthy, happy weekend, guys. Keep up the fight, and we'll see y'all soon.
Thanks.
Bye.